$100,000 in your bank account. Most people think that's the finish line. It's not even close. That's actually the moment where most Australians either set themselves up for serious long-term wealth or quietly watch inflation eat their savings alive while they do absolutely nothing. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what to do with $100,000 in Australia in 2026, step by step, so your money stops sitting there and starts doing the heavy lifting for you. Let's get one thing straight right off the bat. If you've managed to save $100,000 in liquid cash, not super, not equity in your home, actual accessible money sitting in an account, you're already ahead of the overwhelming majority of Australians. Most working adults in this country are getting by on far less in genuine savings, even if their overall net worth looks decent on paper, once you throw property and super into the mix. So give yourself a moment. That was genuinely hard work. But here's the trap, and it catches more people than you'd think. A lot of Australians hit this number and completely freeze. Do I invest it? Dump it into super? Pay down the mortgage? Buy a place? Just leave it in a high-interest savings account and hope for the best? That indecision? It costs you real money. Every single day. So what you need isn't motivation. You don't need someone telling you money is great and investing is good. What you actually need is a clear, practical, step-by-step game plan built specifically for the Australian financial landscape right now. And that's exactly what this is, right? Step 1. And yes, it's boring, but skip this and everything else falls apart. Before you invest a single dollar, you need a proper emergency fund locked away and untouched. The standard guidance is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. In Australia's current cost of living environment, with rents still elevated in most capital cities, groceries going nowhere fast, and energy bills doing what they do, a realistic 6-month buffer for most people lands somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000, depending on your situation. Now, where do you actually park this in 2026? High interest savings account rates have come down meaningfully from where they were a couple of years ago, but there are still solid options on the table. ING's Savings Maximiser, Macquarie's savings account, and UBank have all been competitive, offering rates in the 4 to 5% range when you meet conditions like depositing a set amount monthly or growing your balance. These conditions aren't hard to hit, but read the fine print because the headline rate and the rate you actually earn can be very different numbers. This money isn't for investing. It's not for opportunity hunting. It's your sleep at night money. It's what stops you from panic selling ETFs at the worst possible moment just because the car needs a new transmission or you cop an unexpected medical bill. Lock it away. Leave it alone. Move on. Now, if you're carrying high interest consumer debt, credit cards, personal loans, buy now, pay later balances, that needs to go next. Full stop. No ETF on the ASX is reliably returning 20+% a year, but most Australian credit cards are charging somewhere between 19 and 22% interest. Paying off a $10,000 credit card balance isn't just a good idea. It's the equivalent of locking in a guaranteed tax-free 20% return on that money. You won't find that anywhere else. And here's something people don't talk about enough. Once that debt is gone, the repayments that were going to the bank every month become free cash flow you can redirect straight into building wealth. The psychological shift is just as real as the financial one. There's something genuinely powerful about knowing every dollar you earn from this point on is yours to keep and yours to grow. All right. This is where it gets interesting. With your emergency fund sorted and your high-interest debt gone, it's time to put the rest of your money to work. And for most Australians, the most straightforward and most effective way to do that is through exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. Two of the most commonly used options for Australians right now are the Vanguard Australian Shares ETF, ticker VAS on the ASX, which gives you broad exposure to the top 300 Australian companies, including the big banks, miners like BHP and Rio Tinto, and consumer staples. And for international exposure, the Vanguard MSCI Index, International Shares ETF, ticker VGS, which tracks large and mid-cap companies across developed markets globally. The beauty of ETFs is their simplicity. You don't need to be picking individual stocks. You don't need to be glued to your phone watching markets move. You buy a broad slice of the economy. You let compounding work over years and decades, and you get on with your life. Now, should you dump the whole amount in at once? Not necessarily. A strategy called dollar cost averaging has you investing a fixed amount at regular intervals, say $3,000 to $5,000 a month, rather than going all in at once. You buy more units when prices drop, fewer when prices are running hot, and over time your average cost per unit smooths out. More importantly, it removes the temptation to try and time the market, which even professional fund managers consistently get wrong. Quick one. If any of this is landing for you and you're currently figuring out what to do with your own savings, drop a comment below and tell me where you're at. Are you at the emergency fund stage, the investing stage, just starting out? I read every single comment and it genuinely helps me make better content for you. Chuck something down there. I'd love to know. Here's a move that most Australians under 40 completely overlook, and it's sitting right there in plain sight. Voluntary contributions into your superannuation, specifically concessional contributions, are taxed at just 15% going in, compared to your marginal income tax rate, which could be anywhere from 19 to 45%, depending on what you earn. The annual concessional contributions cap sits at $30,000 for the 2025 to 26 financial year, and that includes your employer's compulsory super guarantee contributions. If your employer is already putting in $15,000 a year, you've got room to salary sacrifice or make personal deductible contributions of up to another $15,000, and every dollar of that reduces your taxable income and gets invested in a low-tax environment that compounds over decades. There's also the carry-forward provision. If you haven't maxed your concessional contributions in any of the last 5 financial years, you may be able to contribute more than the standard annual cap this year. Worth checking with your super fund or a financial advisor. This isn't glamorous, but super is one of the most tax-effective investment vehicles most Australians have access to, and most people are not using it nearly as well as they could. Now, what about property? With $100,000, you are in a genuinely interesting position, because depending on your situation, there are a couple of different paths worth considering. The First Home Super Saver scheme lets eligible first home buyers withdraw voluntary super contributions up to $50,000 in total to put towards a home deposit. Combined with your $100,000 in cash savings and whatever you might access through state-based first homeowner grants and stamp duty concessions, the picture can start looking more viable than you might think. That said, property in Australia's major cities is still carrying serious price weight. Sydney and Melbourne remain among the most expensive housing markets on the planet. If you're buying, make sure you're buying because the numbers genuinely work. Not because of FOMO, not because your parents keep telling you to, and not because you're worried about missing out on a run that may or may not materialise. Property can absolutely be part of a strong wealth strategy. Just make sure it's a deliberate part of your plan, not a reaction to social pressure. So let's bring this all together. If you've got $100,000 right now, here's the play. Carve out $15,000 to $25,000 as an emergency fund in a high-interest savings account that you actually meet the conditions for. Wipe out every dollar of high-interest consumer debt. Start dollar cost averaging the remainder into a simple 2-fund ETF portfolio. Broad Australian exposure through VAS and global developed market exposure through VGS. Look seriously at voluntary super contributions and whether the carry-forward rules work in your favour. And if property is on your radar, get across the First Home Super Saver scheme before you do anything else. The reason most Australians never build meaningful wealth outside of their super and their family home isn't because they don't earn enough. It's because their investable savings sit in an account, earning next to nothing while everything around them gets more expensive. $100,000 sitting in a transaction account earning 0.5% is losing purchasing power in real time. But $100,000 deployed properly across an emergency fund, a tax-effective super strategy, and a diversified ETF portfolio. That's the kind of foundation that genuinely changes where you end up. If this helped you think more clearly about your money, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more Australians find this content. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.